Welcome to the Wayne Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is Martha. Oh, I should have asked you, Geaney?
Geaney.
Geaney. Thank you, Geaney. Martha is the first generation daughter of two loving Irish parents who hailed from counties Mayo and Cork. She writes the Star O'Brien amateur sleuth cozy mystery series set in County Mayo, Ireland. Martha's passion for Ireland grew out of her love for her parents and her Irish roots, and she attended an Irish boarding school for 2 years as a teenager. So she had no choice but to fall in love with the people, especially all the cousins, the landscape, and the culture. Many years ago, Martha decided that her heart belongs to County Mayo, and as the story goes, decided to set her books in real places that she has visited many times. Martha was born in New York City and lived in New Jersey from the age of 8 until she moved to Florida in 2017. She is a member of Sisters in Crime and the Alliance of Independent Authors. Welcome, Martha. Please tell us a little more about yourself and the Star O'Brien series.
Janet, thank you for hosting this chat today, and to the Wayne Public Library for doing that as well. And I did spend a lot of time in the Wayne Public Library when I was growing up because, as the bio said, we moved to New Jersey when I was about 8 years old, and we lived in Lincoln Park. And then in my early 30s, I moved to North Haledon, but I did go to, for two years of high school, I attended DePaul High School in Wayne, New Jersey, and had a lot of friends in that area. So I was in and out of the Wayne Public Library often as well in my lifetime. So yes, what you said in the bio, you know, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English and a PhD, not in English. But what I really wanted to do was be a writer when I was growing up. And I did start out a career as an English teacher in Hawthorne, New Jersey. But I was very disappointed because I was not teaching literature. I was teaching grammar, writing, and spelling to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So, you know, my parents always encouraged me to teach. They were not really in support of me, you know, living in a loft somewhere writing books. And I spent a lot of my life in after I left education in consulting. So, and then back into my PhD, where most of my writing was based, you know, academic research and a dissertation. So a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to write mystery stories. I love mystery stories. I love reading them. I prefer female authors. I usually enjoy their stories more. And I just said, okay, I am going to do this. I've wanted to do it all my life. And I came up with the idea for the Star O'Brien series. I was in Ireland. I've spent a lot of time in Ireland over the years. My mother is from Mayo. And my parents had a cottage there that belonged to my mother's uncle. And we still have that cottage. So it made it easy for me to go back and forth to Ireland. But I fell in love with Ireland, as you said in my bio, the landscape, my cousins. We didn't have any cousins here in the United States. They were all in Ireland. So it was so exciting to go there and meet all these people that were relatives. So I was in Ireland on a trip. I was out on Clare Island, which is where the first book is named after. And I just had a notebook and I wrote down a what if statement. What if there was an American visiting in search of her mother, and meanwhile there was a dead body on the island? What if she was called on to investigate that mystery? And I called her Star O'Brien. And I don't know, somebody asked me the other day, where did you get her name from? And I can't tell you. I have no idea as I think back on it now, but she is a character that I absolutely love. So that was the beginning of the series. And I decided then that I would set all of the books in real places in County Mayo, because the readers, most of the people who read my books are probably, the demographics are female. They like mystery series. They like, they follow, the main character through the series, and some of them are people who have either been to Ireland or they would like to go there, or maybe they have some ancestry there. So I just, because of all the places that I write about, I have been to, and I just think it's a beautiful place. I decided that part of my brand as an author would be to set it in real places in County Mayo. And each one of my books comes with a map that people can print out if they belong to my subscriber email list. They get a map that they can print out of, like, for example, there's a map of Clear Island that they can follow along. Some of the landmarks that are in the book, or they can follow along on the map. And that's been an adventure in itself, getting some of those maps, especially the map for the last book, Death at the Turla Museum. That was a very interesting journey to get that. So a long answer to your first question.
Okay. And it is a series. Won't have to tell us how Star decides to stay there and not just visiting from the U.S. But how do you keep the continuity, the storylines and the characters as the series progresses?
Well, I have what we call, you've probably heard of this, a Bible. So I have the Star OBrien Bible. It's got all of the characters in it, and everything that a writer does when they start, well, everything you're told to do. Maybe not everyone does this, but the characters, their birth dates, what they look like, their occupation, a little bit of their backstory. So all of the characters that appear in each of the books. So there's Star, there's her loved one who has passed away. This is how she came to get this cottage in Ireland. His Aunt Georgina, Lork and Mikhail. So there's several characters that are in each of the books. So there's a backstory for each of them. And then in each book, there are characters. And of course, usually what I do is write about what are their motivations. Why would they want the victim or victims to be killed, murdered? What are their ulterior motives? I think if you're a mystery writer, even in real life, I always have to say, well, really, what's behind what they're doing or what they're saying? What are their motivations for what they're doing? So that's how I keep the continuity. Each book has a standalone mystery that is solved at the end of the book, but there's a continuing thread. Star's search for her mother, who disappeared when Star was 6 years old. They lived in the Bronx, New York, and the police never really investigated. They said that Star's mother abandoned Star. So Star has never believed that, not for 1 minute. And she's been searching all her life for her mother. So that story progresses, that plot line progresses through the books, and we'll have a resolution in the fourth book in the series, which I'm working on now. So that's how I keep track of them. Documents, the Bible, and just having all that information available.
Okay. And you just kind of mentioned the next book, and that was my next question. Can you tell us something about what you're currently working on?
Okay, well, this is interesting. It's set at Kylemore Abbey, is part of where the mystery will take place. And Kylemore Abbey is not in County Mayo. It's in County Galway, but of course, I think I can get away with that because Star is in Mayo and she's going back and forth. So Kylemore Abbey is, I believe it was Benedictines. It's a beautiful, beautiful place in the Connemara Mountains area. And several years ago, might be 10 or 15 years now, they refurbished a Victorian garden that's part of the property there, that it's believed the Benedictine nuns, they grew food there, and it's surrounded by a beautiful wall, and there's doors in the wall leading into different places. So that's where that book will be taking place. And the mystery, it's going to deal with environmental issues. I've been doing a lot of research. I've learned recently that one of the crimes that gets committed in Ireland is the poaching of songbirds. And there are poachers who are involved in a lot of nefarious different things. But one of the things they'll do is they'll scope out the nests of the songbirds and then steal the babies because they can sell them. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago, Ireland created its own special police, they call them guards, task force that deals with the poaching of different animals. And so just thinking about, the beauty of Ireland and of Mayo and the songbirds kind of got me going on the fourth book. And I'm trying to tie together a lot of threads, especially the thread about Star's mother in that book as well. So that's what I'm working on. I'm also trying, I have an idea for another series. This would be paranormal mystery. It would be set in County Mayo, much further north, the most northern part of the county. Right as you look right out, one of the last points looking out over the Atlantic Ocean. And that series will have a former police guarder who has a secret, and she's come home to that area from Dublin, and she's now put up a detective shingle. She's going to be doing some investigations, and there's going to be a paranormal aspect to it. Because when you think of Ireland, you've got to think of fairies and leprechauns and, fairy rings and some of the myth and mythology that goes with the history there. So that's what I'm working on.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun. And do you have, most people are like, oh, the reason that they wrote Star O'Brien, you wrote her, maybe she is similar to you, but is there a secondary character that maybe that, you just love writing that secondary character?
Well, everyone asks me who Star O'Brien is based on. Okay. Again, like I said, when I think back and look at my notes, I don't know why I chose her name, but Aunt Georgina, she's a secondary character, and she is definitely based on my Aunt Annie, my mother's sister. And when I first met my Aunt Annie, I was 4 years old, and she had a little shop in her house that people would come and, I guess, buy bread and different things. And I just remember her giving me this candy that I love called a Crunchy Bar from my aunt. And I was this little 4-year-old. And then when I went to boarding school in Ireland, my aunt, that same aunt, at the time, not everyone had a telephone. And she had a telephone installed inside her front door. and people would come to use the phone, and they would leave money just on the phone there to pay for the call when it would come in. And then she got involved in horses. And then when I later on, one of the next times I went to visit after I graduated from boarding school, and I went back to Ireland on a break from college, she had started a dress shop in Castlebar. So Aunt Georgina owns a dress shop. And, you know, when you think back, my aunt in those days, she would be considered very entrepreneurial, because, you know, women really didn't have a lot of roles outside the home. And she was the mother of 7 children. So that's who Aunt Georgina is based on. And my aunt always wore a scarf. And Aunt Georgina always is wearing a scarf, and it's trailing behind her in the book. So that's who she's based on. And then, you know, some of the other characters, I try to name them for people that I know. In my second book, in the third book, I actually tried to choose some Irish names for the characters that had meaning. So if somebody was a very angry character, I might have chosen an Irish name for them that means to be angry. So I don't know if anybody has picked up on that when they're reading the books, but, you know, maybe a few years from now, somebody will say, hey, you know. So yeah, that's where some of the characters come from.
Okay. You mentioned that that the name Star O'Brien just came to you and you always wanted to write. What inspired you to start writing? Did you write anything before you wrote the Star O'Brien? Like, is there anything?
I wrote a nonfiction book, a women's leadership book called Bring Your Spirit to Work, One Woman at a Time. And so I've always been writing, like I said, whether I was working in consulting or when I was, you know, at the university in you know, an education role, I was always writing and always wanting to write fiction. So it was something I wanted to do. And I had a period of ill health. That's maybe 15 years ago now. And I just decided that, you know, there are things in life that we want to do, and we should try to do them. So whether you have assistance with that or whether you do it on your own, you need to do it. So that's, you know, where I went with it. And this story has been going around in my head. I'm very attached to it. And I just thought, okay, I have to write this. And of course, it comes along with the dream of maybe one day being able to spend a few months a year in Ireland. Up to now, it's it's usually maybe 2 weeks or a week at a time. And that's the writer living in the loft dream that my parents said, you can't do that. Well, maybe I'll be able to go back and do it at some point. Who knows?
Maybe. that sounds wonderful, actually.
I saw that Frank put a note in the chat about thin places. It's very interesting because there are many, this idea of thin places where the veil, the separation of the world that we're in and the spiritual world, that there are some places where that veil is very thin, and you almost feel as if you're in that other world, that very spiritual place. And it might be about 2 years ago, I think there was, I was aware of thin places, and then there was a very good article in the New York Times about it. But I think that's part of what I feel when I'm in Ireland and some of these places that I write about. And I'm hoping in the other series that I'm going to start I'm doing the research now that I can bring some of that forward into that as the paranormal mystery. But several years ago, I got to go on a walk. I think it's about a 26-mile walk. It's called St. Patrick's Way to St. Patrick's Mountain, which is a mountain that everybody makes a pilgrimage to once a year, because it's believed that St. Patrick was up there for 40 days and 40 nights praying and fasting. And but I went with a group, and we went to all these we went through these fields, supposedly the walk that St. Patrick would have originally taken. So it was a full day's walk, and that's considered one of those thin places. And there were things like holy wells, and there was a graveyard where there was a priest with us who said mass on a gravestone, and it's where they believed a lot of the children and people during Cromwell times were killed there. So again, to me, there's always been a draw in Ireland, especially in nature, of being able to be in a place where there's a feeling that you're very close to spirituality and to nature. So that's
Okay.
I don't know, Frank, if that answered your question. You can write a comment in the chat.
Okay. And on average, how long does it take you to write one of your books?
It's been taking me a year for each book. I would like to write faster, but that's just the way it is right now. It takes a year. Typically, in the mystery genre, the reader has an expectation that the book is between 65 and 70,000 pages. So words, not pages. So yeah, it does take me about a year. The thing that takes the longest is the editing. That's the most difficult part.
That's my next question. What's the most difficult part?
Yeah, it's the editing. Before I moved from New Jersey to Florida, I belonged to a writing guild up in the Mahwah Public Library, writers group there. So the gentleman, his name is Nick Johns. He's a published author as well. I have kept in touch with him. So he's usually my first editor of my work. So he's been with me through all three books. So that's another part of the continuity. And then after he beats me up over the manuscript, then it goes to a copy editor through a group that I work with. They do all the formatting of my books. So they outsource. They have, actually, you're probably familiar with this author, Janette, Marie Force. She's a well-known romance author, and there's a group of people who work for her called the Formatting Fairies, and they actually do my book formatting, and I contract through them for my copy editor, and then the last edit is a proofreader. So I have 3 editors to go through the books before, we say that they're done. So it takes a while. I mean, that's part of planning that is probably going to take a year for the book. And then I contract with a graphic designer who does all the covers for me. She's done all the book covers. So, yeah.
The book covers are very, very nice. I was going to say, hold on.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Do you plot your books? I mean, it's mystery, so gotta assume yes.
Yes,
Mystery.
definitely. Yes. I have these spiral bound 8.5 by 11. You can see some of, I do plot my books. And so there are several, I've taken a lot of courses, writing courses through Writer Digest University. And also they're being involved with Sisters in Crime, also, which is a wonderful organization for anyone who likes to write mysteries. Almost every month, there's all kinds of guest speakers, guest authors. We do a lot of the NaNoWriMo. There's going to be a whole series of dates in July now where they'll be hosting call-ins, Zoom calls to do the NaNoWriMo. And so a lot of the books on writing. So yeah, I have to plot, especially for a mystery. And again, that's the difficult part. Right now, I'm doing all of that background, deciding the premise, the names of the characters, the step sheets for book 4. And you're kind of anxious to start writing, but if I don't do that, you can find yourself in the middle of the book and you're like, where am I going? You have to know where you're going with it. Yeah.
Okay. And what was the most surprising thing that you learned while crafting your books?
Well, I'm an independent author, an indie author. And I think what most people need to learn is that it's a business. And somebody said one time, you need to be able to get your hands dirty. So you have to, even though I don't, self-edit, I outsource my editing, my formatting, my covers, you have to understand how that's all done. It's a product. So what's the life cycle of this product from the idea all the way into the hands of the reader? And I think the wonderful inspirational side of thinking I'm going to live in the loft and do all my writing, well, how am I going to find readers? So there's the marketing, the entire marketing side of it, and finding your readers. That's the most important thing, and understanding that it is business and you have to be able to manage that. And so how do you juggle the writing part, but then the part where nowadays, you have to have a presence on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. I have a mailing list of readers, and I don't usually send out emails that say buy my book every weekend. I don't do that. So you're constantly looking for content. How do you add value to people in between the books, waiting for your next book to come? So that's been a real learning, because in the beginning I was just like, okay, I wrote my book, it's out there, So those are all the things that are part of the publishing life. And if you have, I don't have an agent. I haven't tried to get an agent just because my life right now is a little chaotic. I have people that I'm caring for in my life. And if you're going to get signed by a publishing firm, you have to be ready. Maybe, are you going to be able to write 2 books a year? They're going to want to know, how many books a year can you write for them? And sometimes your series, you're told, oh, your series is going to end now. You're going to bring that series to an end. So maybe at some point, I'm thinking about the paranormal mystery series. Maybe I'll try to find an agent for that series. And now that I know enough about the life cycle of this product, that this might be the time, to look for an agent. Yeah, but that's what surprised me. Figuring out that you're really you're in a business and you have to know what needs to be done, and make sure that you have talented people on your team when you're choosing your editors and the people who are designing your covers, etc.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your publishing journey? Oh, and about I'm gonna say it wrong probably. Turlo, Turlo,
Turla Nolan Publishing.
Turlo Nolan Publishing. Thank you.
Turla Nolan Publishing. Yeah, well, again, it goes back to understanding that this is a business. So when I wrote my nonfiction book, so for example, you in the library, every book has a unique identifier, an ISBN number.
Mhm.
And I know that there are a lot of indie authors that don't want to pay for that. You have to buy an ISBN number that's unique to your book. And I've spoken to people who that's been a big mistake in their life, because then if they publish through Amazon, they don't really own they have a lot of difficulties because of that. So again, that's part of the learning, was that I was going to own my content. So each of my books has an ISBN number. And then I created a publishing company called Turla Nolan Publishing. Turla is a village in County Mayo. It's where my mother and some of her family, my mom was born in Turla. And then Nolan is a family name. Her mother, my mother was married, is Hughes, but her mother's maiden name was Nolan. So that's part of me giving, I call it tipping my heart to my mother, writing these books in County Mayo, and some of the names that I choose. I have a dog, his name is Turla also. But yeah, that again, it gets back to, if you think of somebody like Oprah Winfrey and Harpo Productions, she owns all of her content. And I think that's an important thing for anybody, no matter what they're creating. Art, I know Frank is on the phone, he creates art. He's got beautiful photography that's featured in all kinds of awards and museums. And you have to own your content. I think nowadays that's very important. So that's what led me to create my own company. And even though I outsource all of that, it's mine. So
That's good to know. I don't think many people, as you just mentioned, the Amazon thing. I mean, it's so easy, just put it up there. But if you lose your content basically, and you're writing a series and you're invested in those characters, that would be kind of a hardship.
And then if people want to copy your books, and I think too, I don't know if it's, you'd probably be able to better answer this question than I can, but a few years ago, if you wanted a library or a like a Barnes and Noble to carry your book in an independent bookstore or in a library, they wouldn't order the books from Amazon. So by having a unique ISBN number, my books are also available through Ingram Spark. So if a library wants to order the paperback, they can do that. And so anybody can walk in and say, I'd really like to get this book, and ask the library to do it for them, or at an independent store or Barnes and Noble. So I don't know if that's the case anymore, but that was part of the issue where brick and mortar didn't want to deal with Amazon. So again, that's another good reason to have your own unique ISBN number on your books.
We actually can now order from Amazon, but for very long we had to say no, we can't get things if it was only something that how to be purchased that way. And
Yeah.
I've heard, and you're like the second or third author that's told me about Ingram, and it is something. I mean, not that I don't want to get things through Amazon, but if there's a library vendor that has it, yeah, I would like to
Yeah.
see if I can get some
Yeah.
books
Ingram
that way.
Spark. Ingram Spark. Yeah. My books are on there. So um, that's part of it. Again, that's like you said, things that surprise you and that you learn. You know, it's the business side, it's the publishing side of things. Yeah.
But it is part of the whole package of writing. It's not just the end, and then
Right.
just everybody buys your book.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's all this other stuff.
Maybe that'll happen one of these days for me. But yeah, I just get a lot of pleasure out of it, and I'm learning, and you keep learning all the time about writing. Your writing gets better. I feel my mysteries get better. My characters are better. So I get a lot of pleasure out of that. So yeah.
You did mention the Sisters in Crime. Um, how important was it for you to join a writers group, or do you have critique partners?
Well, it was very important. When I was in New Jersey, I just loved the group at the Mawa Public Library. And there were, let's say at any one time, there were about 10 of us. And every week we circulated through the group. So every week you read 2 submissions from 2 of the members. And we received feedback. Now, when I moved to Florida, I couldn't really find that. I couldn't find that. So I would love to have that. In fact, today I was just trying to think about that. So I joined Sisters in Crime, the local chapter. They're not that local. It's about an hour's drive. They're in the Orlando area, the chapter. So Florida is just so diverse in geography. There's three chapters, but they're all, the one that was closest was an hour away. So I did join that chapter. And then with the pandemic, we went to Zoom meetings. And then this year, they asked me to be president. It's a 2-year commitment. So I always say there was a great movie a few years ago called The Accidental Tourist. I was kind of the accidental president because I wasn't looking for that role. But we don't have critique groups with, we do a lot of guest speakers. I'm really excited that in August, Lisa Unger, she writes thrillers. She's going to be we're going to have a conversation with her. So I'll send you the link.
Very nice. Yes.
You'd have somebody who'd like to join that day. So yeah, I would love to have a critique partner. I really, really would. I've tried with 1 or 2 people, but everybody has so many commitments. But it's something that I'm looking for. So if you come across anybody, Janet, that wants to do Zoom calls, because it really helps, to have someone where you say, okay, we're going to write for 15 or 20 minutes, and then talk about what you're writing, and then have somebody look at it. But Nick, who I work with from the group in Mawa, he is like a critique partner, because when he reads my manuscript, I might get back, 5 or 6 pages from him of, here's some of the things that I don't like, or that you need to do. And then as I go through each section, we're back and forth on email, and he's giving me feedback. But yeah, that would be a nice thing to have. So
Do you read your reviews?
most of my reviews are on Amazon. So like my first book, there might be 95 or 96 reviews now, which isn't a lot. I'd like to have a couple of thousand. But a lot of them are just where people just click. They don't write anything. So I do read them. I really, really appreciate the readers. Like I said, I try to add value to them. Through the emails, through the maps, through the books. And I do read, most of the reviews are good. There are one or two that aren't good. And it's important that you read your reviews and understand what it is that the readers like and what they don't like, because I'm writing for them. I'm trying to bring something out to them for their enjoyment. So yes, that's one of those the 4 or 5 things that you need to do, like getting your hands dirty, is understanding the business side of it, but also reading your reviews and seeing if there's something that you can change in your writing. And a lot of times I'll just say, okay, out of 95 or 96 reviews, where there are only just 1 or 2 that weren't good, so maybe it just wasn't the right thing for that reader. I'll meet people and they'll go, oh, I'd love to read one of your books. And usually I say to them, well, do you usually read mysteries? And if they say no, I'll say, okay, I'll just give you a book. Don't buy it. I'll give it to you. Because if they don't read mysteries, I don't want them buying a book that they're not going to like. If really all the time they just read romances, there isn't any romance in my books. So you want to, again, that's where your readers are so important, understanding who you're writing for and trying to connect with them. So
now I have to ask, because this is one of the things that I always say to all of my romantic fiction book group is,
yeah.
There is romance in everything. So you just said there's no romance in your story. There aren't 2 characters in all of the stories that kind of you could see down the road have a relationship.
Yeah, there are 2 characters. You sound like one of my cousin Anne, I see, is on here. Well, her sister Mary is always like, aren't we going to have a little bit of romance? So yeah, there could be. Again, book 4, I'm trying to pull some threads together. I'm very conflicted. Do I end the series with book 4, or do I make sure that I tie up the issue around Star's mother, the arc that's been going through all the 4 books, and then could we continue on in some way, and maybe have some little bit of a romance in there. But Star O'Brien is very independent. She lost her mother. Her adoptive parents died in a plane crash. Her significant other died of a heart attack, and it was after he died that she found out that he had this cottage in Ireland. That was a big secret. So she's very vulnerable, and she hides that by being very independent and just not saying, she doesn't have time for romance anymore. So but we'll see where she gets to by the end of book 4.
I've read a lot of different always female authors I prefer also, and
Yeah.
and I've read a lot of mystery series, very long mystery series, and there's always, like, even the most independent, and I think that, to me, I will say one of the most independent one was Sue Grafton, all of
Oh
her
yeah.
alphabet. And we know that she had there's always a little bit, and there's always that, I think, when people read, they're like, oh, there's chemistry there, maybe
There
something's going
is
to
there
happen.
is chemistry with Star and a character. Yes. So I don't know what's going to happen. At the end of book 3, it looked pretty good. That there was, believe me, there was no kiss or anything like that, but he came through for her in a big way, and he really began to show more of his feelings for her, and they had some really honest conversations. Again, my editor Nick forced me into that in that book, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But I'll be thinking about you, Janet, when I'm writing that book.
Okay.
When I write that scene.
I mean, it could be nothing. It's just the chemistry on the page, and the
Yeah.
anticipation that, maybe in the next book,
Yes. Yeah. Maybe in the next book, maybe, yes, somehow, yes, something throws them together even more. than they've been thrown together in the first 3 books. So yeah, I guess there's a little bit of romance there. It's just I have researched how to write romances, and I haven't taken a course in that yet, but I just don't know if it's in me. I really don't. So uh
Okay.
yeah.
Um, so I have to ask, what advice would you give a new author that's starting out? What's one piece of advice that you wish you knew?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, you have to create the content. So that's what this is all about. We're selling content, whether you're going to, go with a traditional publisher or be an indie publisher. You have to create the content. So um, figure out when you can write. Make appointments with yourself to do the writing and create the content. That's very important. And I think the other thing then is to figure out who your audience is. It's just like anything. If you're, writing in business, fiction or nonfiction, who's the audience for the content that you are creating? And you have to start thinking about, excuse me, you have to start thinking about where you're going to find that audience. So if you're traditionally published, your publishing company is going to know, they have all that research, they'll know who your audience should be and where they will be. But they are going to be looking at you as the author to also create a platform that, brings more readers in. Excuse me, I'm getting a tickle. So I think that's the most important thing. Figure out who your audience is and write.
Um, without the writing, there's no career there. There's no writing.
Right.
Um, I always ask now if there's any questions that any of the audience wants to ask you, if they would write it into the chat.
Okay.
And while we wait to see if anybody writes anything, I'm going to ask you the fun question about can you tell us about your love of Heather?
Again, it all really ties back to just my love of Ireland. My mom, her mother from the Turla area. There's a series of little villages in that area of Mayo. There's Turla. There's another village area called Park, Parke, and that part of Mayo. As you're riding along one of the rural roads there, you're just looking out at very craggy looking landscape, lots of rocks. You can see the Nathan Mountains off in the distance. There's some beautiful roads that go up into the mountains, and there's nothing. You can go for a ride and you're just totally lost up there. You don't want to get off those roads. So all through that area, there's heather growing, and it's just beautiful. So it's the color. That's one of my favorite colors, the lavender, the purple looking heather. And again, it just goes back to, my love of my parents, love of my mother, who's 92. She turned 92 last week. And just her love that she had for her parents, whom, she left Ireland when she was about 17 years old, and she never saw her parents again, but she's talked about them all her life. So, it's just that tie there. And it's that, going back to my own study of literature and Jane Eyre and, the Moors, and just the beautiful solitude of some of those areas where you see the heather just growing, in the cracks of the rocks. So
Very beautiful.
now, have you ever been to Ireland?
I have not.
Okay, well, there you go.
Um, so Frank is asking, do you remember Brenda Starr, reporter? She was a cartoon character, I think, and I thought of her when I started reading your books.
I actually do remember the name. Yes. So that's interesting. Because again, I didn't, the only thing with the Star O'Brien name, one of the reasons why I chose it was there is a stone on Ackle Island where she believes her mother was born. And the night before people would leave Ireland, when they were immigrating, they would go up to that mountain and they would pick a little piece of the white stone and take it with them for good luck. And that's called the Star of Ackle. So her mother used to say to her, "You are my little star." And in one of my trips, to Ireland, I went to Ackle. I've been on Ackle Island several times, but I went to a pottery shop there, and they had little Star of Ackle made into earrings and a little necklace. And of course, I bought them. And sometimes when I'm writing, I wear them just to remind me of Star. And then the O'Brien part of it was because I imagine Star to be such a independent person. The initials are SOB, Star O'Brien. So that's where that comes from. Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier.
That is what.
She's an SOB. Not really. You have to love Star, but even some of the reviews, people are, which I like, they like the stories, they like the plot line, but they're angry at her sometimes because they think she's too independent, too stubborn. So that's important to me because that means she's real to some people. And I've tried to create her to be real. Yeah.
Sounds like you've succeeded.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm not gonna forget the SOP thing now. Star and the books are great fun, is what Frank says.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you, Anne, for being here too. Anne is in Ireland. So it's got to be after midnight.
Wow. Thank you so much for staying up.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone through our questions, and so I want to say thank you to Martha for joining us today. Thank you for the participants for joining us too and your questions. Thank you for staying up, Anne. And we look forward to book 4. Book 4 sounds like a really exciting one, actually, with all the revelations that are going to happen.
Might come. Right.
And
the romance.
And the potential for romance, of course.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Janet. Thank you very, very much. And for everybody who's on, and for the readers, the people who will see this, I really think I couldn't do it without people who go to the library and get the book and leave reviews. So thank you, and thank you to the Wayne Public Library. Take care.